Location tag team. Time and date 15:59 on the 6th of October 2022. Object material sand. Duration 22 minutes 34 seconds. Notes on execution. Again, I slowly enter the space. For a while, I just stand inside the pile of sand. I grab as much as I can carry with my hands. While walking, some of the sand falls out. The sand is leaving a trace on the floor. I go over to the biggest and tallest birch tree and start to drizzle the rest of the sand around it. This I repeat with all the birches. At one point, I discover that the sand makes a small sound while being poured over the tree. This action I repeat one more time. Before leaving the space, I touch all the birches. 2 notes regarding the performance. In the beginning, I forget my hat, and I have to leave to put it on. In the middle of the performance, someone goes to the toilet and then leaves the building. The door makes a sound which interferes with the performance. Performance needs to be rejected, but the action can be repeated. Hi. Sorry, Karen, I can't hear you.
Oh, it would help if I turn my mic on. So, disappearing as well. Um, so welcome and to the Artist Focus with Anette Friedrich Johannessen. And we started by sharing, by you sharing a text. Do you want to talk about where that text comes from, Annette?
Yes, it's I had a sort of work studio space for about 2 weeks last fall, uh, and in that space I had about 5 birches which I've been digging up from the cabin in the mountains. So they had like the roots and everything on them, and I thought that I would do one performance every day without really thinking about what to do. I should just start doing the performance and I will bring other materials in as it went along. And after the performance, I had to write a report about the action or if anything specific happened or if I wanted to continue working with that performance the next day or if I should reject it. And this performance was rejected. But at the final day when we had the viewing, I did as many as of the performances I could within 3 hours. So all the performances I didn't reject, I really did throughout the opening hours.
And were those in public space, or were those in the gallery?
Those
Or,
were in the gallery. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So uh, the piece very much reminds me of Joseph Boys, and the planting of trees. But it's interesting that you're digging the sand, and in the introductory text. Shall I bring that up?
Yeah.
The So you have this lovely practice of hand typing these written reflections after a performance, and I was really, when you were reading it at the beginning of this broadcast, there's this sense of stillness that is captured in the action, and there's a sense of, even at the end of the planting of the tree, there's this stillness that happens, but we're very much filled with the air and the sound of the sand as it's happening. Can you, um, do you want to talk us through your documentation process and how these are traces, and maybe do you see these as elements of the performance? Or, as this ongoing dialogue that you're engaged with?
It is, and they're sort of diaries as well because I tend to share a lot. Because when I perform, I like to perform for a really long time, durational performances, and there's a lot of emotions going through my head while performing, and those are the reflection I would like to have written down because not just for the audience because I see them as a way to document the performance, but also for myself so I can remember the emotions and the senses I went through during my performance. But I am quiet when I perform. I like to connect to a place where I feel sort of in a meditative state. So it's a process to get there. that's why I like durational performances, because it takes some time to find that stillness, to find that calmness, to sort of, well, it feels like my eyes are opening up and I look at the world quite differently, and it sort of, I don't know, everything becomes a bit more calm. There's so many expressions and impressions for us every day. So I think that type of chaos we can experience needs some kind of order and calmness.
Yeah, and I think that do you have, it's interesting that you talk about the preparatory, well, I wanted to talk about these pieces are like a sense of the ongoing dialogue of practice, these traces of the performance that you document. But I was intrigued to know, and I know when we're doing production meetings, I often ask artists to share ways in which they prepare their bodies for a performance, and especially when you're working in durational works. Is there a specific methodology that you apply, as you prepare your body in the run up to starting a performance?
Well, just before I start, I listen to music, but when I'm there, I think you can see it in text as well. I'm either lying still or I'm standing still, and I'm taking a few minutes to just, not just to calm myself down, but to sort of get into the space I'm in, to sort of analyze where I am, where's the audience, and how should I start the performance. Since it's so intuitive, there's quite often I don't know what I'm going to do. It really depends on the material I have, or what it tells me I should do with it. So I take a few minutes every time and just sort of get into the space and get into myself, and I start working with that.
Right. And what kind of music do you have a particular song that you listen to before each one, or does it change?
No, but it's black metal. So it's the black metal.
Black metal.
So it's the complete opposite of the space I'm looking for in the performance. But I think that music is so chaotic that it calms me down.
That's so interesting. And we've, in our preparatory conversation, we were talking about these elements of order and chaos. Let me move to, is there, how are you thinking about, because there was, the digging of the sand in the video was very much this meditative process and an everyday action. But, how are you thinking about these kind of dualistic elements of order and chaos in your work? Maybe we could show another slide, perhaps. Maybe this one. Do you see this one?
Not now.
No. Okay.
But I'm really into Norse, not just religion, but society and how they live their lives, and etc. And I read somewhere that they felt they were connected, order and chaos, that you couldn't have order unless you experience chaos. And I think that's for all of us, that we have times in our life that everything sort of turns into this mess and is chaotic and perhaps difficult and stressful to manage through. But at the same time, you need to find ways to sort of balance yourself out again, and that sort of keeps you going. It's a sort of, it can take part in an everyday ritual that sort of, that helps you to move through the day and to sort of get some ease. But I think it's the same way with the reason why I like black metal music, because it's so intense, it's so high energy, it can feel really chaotic, but if you really listen to it, you will find you can start understanding the lyrics, you can listen to the guitar, you can hear the drums, you can hear the bass, and that evens it out again. It becomes order. But I think that rituals and everyday activities which you repeat it's what gives you order in your life, and it's necessary for us as humans. I think we all have our own ways. If you start thinking about it, what do we do every day, and what do we need every day to manage to sort of get up in the morning or go to bed in the evening? We have certain types of ways to do that, and that helps us to find order.
And yes, and what kind of things do you use, to find your own sense of balance? Because I know that you shared some techniques that you use, like embodied techniques.
Yeah, I need to have things a specific type of way. I need to make sure that I do the same things every morning. That I drink my coffee, it's quiet, I take my time, I do some yoga or exercise. But I also like to be outside in the landscape or in nature. That's really helpful. So if I had a stressful week, I know I will spend a weekend outside, go hiking or stuff. Yeah, and I think that's where I make my art anyway, outside in the public space or in the landscape.
Yeah, and so I was thinking that, I mean, for myself, I do Tai Chi, morning, and I have to do that in order to get through the day, So there are these, different rituals of embodied practice that are, on a daily level that you're using to really kind of connect your body to this sense of peace and balance.
Yeah.
I want to kind of go back to this connection with nature, and you put it up there. You're how are you like thinking about this interplay between chaos and order in how you're developing the scores for your performances in public space?
What I do the most is just that I find a residency where I can travel to, and I spend as much time in there as I can, and I go outside every day, and I make a small gesture in the landscape, and I go back next day and I go hiking and I find a new place to do the performance, and then I repeat that action throughout the residency. But so I start by hiking, and the materials I need to use in my performance comes to me. I don't pick them. They sort of it depends on what type of landscape I'm in. It could be from the house I stay in, but it normally is from the outside. But there's my ritual. I pack my backpack with the camera and the water and everything I need, and I dress warm because I like to travel somewhere Arctic. And I just go hiking, and sort of my senses tell me where to stop this is the place you should perform, or you should try to do a performance here. And then I wrap everything out and I change my clothes and I do a small gesture with the landscape, and then I pack my things back up again and I go back home and I write about the performance.
And you know, I think this might be a good point to share the residency that you did in the steel works. Do you think it's a good point to move to that video? Should we share? Yes. So I'll remove us from the screen.
think you need to unmute yourself again.
It's I love the dramatic landscape, the horizons that you're choosing. There's a real, the sense of land and sea, and the immensity of these, the figure within the immensity of these landscapes. Can you, I love the story and the research that you did behind this work. Can
Yeah.
you share can you share that story behind this work and the framing?
The framing landscapes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Because I've been inspired by something called Inuksuk, which is a landmark you can find in northern Canada, Greenland, or Alaska, I think. And it's something they build with stones. So it's a stone figurine that's quite tall, and inside of it, it has an open frame. And it's meant to be used as a reference point or a navigation for hunting grounds, fishing spots, etc. for people really long time ago. And I like the idea of framing the important parts of the landscape and how subjective they can be, but in Inuksuk it was really meant for something important. You needed to know where to hunt and to find fish or catch food or things like that. But it's really interesting to sort of, when you start framing the landscape, you see it as a painting again. So it has a lot of story to it. But for me, it's about truly showing people the importance of sort of preserving the landscape at the same time. To sort of use it for what you need it for, but don't overuse it. It's yeah.
Yeah. We're just it's interesting that you say that, because there's a wonderful saying that we are quoting in the exhibition at the moment, because we've got Vanessa Dion Fletcher's One Pump Belt, which is the dish with one spoon treaty, and clauses state that you take what you need, you leave something for others, and you keep the dish clean.
Yeah.
And it's this, indigenous, applying this indigenous thinking to how
Yeah.
we move forward. And there's a question in the chat from Jenny Klein, and she asks, where is the landscape that is being framed? So
It's in Spitsbergen, north of Norway. They have a small. It's a really small city in a way. It's a research center which you can't get there without by plane. So it's a research station, and there's about 42 people who live there, and they work for the researchers. They have a kitchen and they do laundry, and then they make sure that the boats that come in, they help the researchers. So it's a really small society, and at the same time, when I was there, you can't really leave. You can't walk too far because of the polar bears. I was really stuck. For 2 weeks, I was stuck inside a really small city center. So it doesn't look like that on the film. If on the film it looks like I'm completely alone, but I wasn't at all. I just had to find my spots where I could film without interference by others.
And this was an old coal mining space, wasn't it? Or
Yes. And I think I'm not sure if they shot all of them down in Spitsbergen, but most of them are shot down now. I think the last they shot it down in the 60s after a really bad accident, but it's all the traces of it are still there, so you can envision how it used to be, because they in Svalbard you just leave everything behind. You don't really take anything away.
Mm. So, the antithesis of that, that ethos in a way, yeah, I mean, that's a endemic issue actually with industry, not keeping
Mm.
the dish clean,
Yeah.
and not cleaning up their messes,
Yeah.
So, this is, but these very kind of meditative actions, they're very poetic actions. In these two videos, you're using the same object that you randomly found.
Yeah.
What was that object that you randomly?
It's been used for the railway tracks. I'm not sure because I only know the Norwegian word for it, jernbaneskinne. But it was used to. They had a small train that took the coal down to the boats, to the ships, and then it moved away. And you can find that everywhere. Basically, you can just pick one up, and I found two, and I used them both. Yeah.
Right, right. And you know, yeah, so and in these two, there are they durational performances. In the second video that we saw, we witnessed you wearing a white dress,
Mm.
and you were, it was different kind of framing as well in the landscape. Was that a durational piece over how
Yes.
many hours?
Well, I'm not sure how long it is. I think I filmed about 1 hour every day, split between those two. So I had the white character in the morning, perhaps, and the other one in the afternoon. But I sort of repeated the action every day throughout the entire stay. For the 2 weeks, I had two performances project going on at the same time. I think that the framing landscapes is the one I did the longest, because I did the first one. I just walked, and then I walked until I was out of the frame, and then I had to go back, get my camera, and move ahead again. But with the framing landscapes, I normally stood in one spot for a really long time. So the videos are a bit shorter than than I edited them in the first time. They're about 15 minutes long, both of them, or between 6 and 15 minutes.
Right. And it's almost like you're holding up a mirror, to the land. And in sculptures that you're talking about, were they mirrors or were they frames?
Frames.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just so the figures are holding these frames.
They
Like
are sort of they're built up it looks like a human, but the tummy area is open.
right. Oh,
Yeah.
right. Right.
Or the area nearby. It really depends on where it is, but it looks like a human with a hole in it.
Right. Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. It's like an ancient binocular in a way.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, but this kind of, thinking about perception and these, so you're employing these, you call them characters. Why?
I don't know. I think they are they are part of me. They are. I think there are. It feels like there are two different types of personas that's inside of me. I have the white character, which is, I don't know, calmer, more sensitive character, and then the other one is a bit rougher and harder and around the edges. But at the same time, they are linked, and I think we all feel the same. We have days we feel a bit weaker, a bit stronger, and we have to sort of. Well, we have different types of identities, I guess. It depends on who you meet and who you are at that moment, and we can change over time, and we can change within a day. But it's not chaos and order, or you could say yin and yang as well, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, because they are connected to a wholeness, but I play them out differently for the performances.
And when we see them together, maybe they do become whole.
Yeah.
Because it it is this yin and yang. So we're going to open it up to the audience to ask questions. So please pop your questions in the chat. But there's some other wonderful images of pieces. Is there one that you would particularly like to talk about? Stones. We've talked about stands. We've talked about the metal.
Yeah.
Yes, because there's a real sense of rhythm in this work as well. And again, it's like thinking about these repetitive actions. You talk about, at the beginning of this broadcast, you talked about the action can be repeated, and this is a very, emblematic of your work and your practice, this constant repetition and the durational and how that activates time.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that sense of time that is activated within this work and the context of this work?
Yeah, this is sort of it's a project I did in 2020 when we sort of didn't have anything else to do. So we joined this group of artists that we did something called Art at the Dock, loosely translated. So we were outside nearby in the city of Bergen. We had someone who's making noise or music, and then there was a painter involved, and I did the performances. In this one, I tried to keep the stone on my head, but while I was drawing circles with the stones on the ground, and I repeated that action over and over again, and allowing it to fail, basically, because it would fail. I knew it would fail. I would lose the stone on my head. But I think that in repeating something over and over again, you can allow things to change. It changes its form. So a stone doesn't just become a stone, becomes something bigger or more meaningful. The same with a chair. If you perform with a chair and you do the same action over and over again, it changes. It's not just a chair anymore. It's something new and more energized. And yeah, so there's sort of no boundaries anymore. You become part of the work, and it becomes part of you, and you sort of, there's a symbiosis going on. You have conversations with the object. So I believe it just that you get into a really specific type of state when you repeat something over and over again, especially when you do long durational performances. It takes you somewhere larger than just the space you're in.
And this work, you're particularly drawing these circles, in the, was that part of it, or how did that shift things for you?
The circles, or
Yes, yeah.
how do I shift things for me? I like the fact that I left a mark on the ground. So I left a trace of myself there. I think that was a thought I had while I was performing. I if I look at this image, it feels like I'm dancing, and I think I got the same feeling when I was performing as well. That my body changed how it moved. It was cold outside, but I didn't sense it anymore, and it was hard work, but at the same time, it was a good type of physical hard work. Um, and I felt connected with the stones, basically. And I think we made a conversation together. We talked and discussed how we should move to the next level of things. And then, of course, there was this sound from the sound piece from what he calls himself, the noisemaker, and that changed how I moved around in the space as well. So when it was really loud and energetic, I would move more energetic, and when it's more quiet, I would calm myself down and move more slower and meditative. So I was, of course, also influenced by the actions that were going on around me at the same time.
Right, right. I'm
Maybe
always
about 3 hours long. Or 1 hour, sorry. It was just 1 hour long.
I'm always wondering whether when, an additional element like that is introduced, whether there is, a sense of, does it become a relational and integral experience, or is there an element of the musician trying to control your movements and
Mm,
control your body, and how is that, you know how, how does that determine one's response, and I always kind of I'm a little bit, how would your action change if it was just you determining your own movement within your own space of agency.
mm.
I'm always, I question those things. But
I've done a few performances with musicians, and it's always been really interesting, especially if they work intuitively as well, because then you can sort of uh, make a conversation together. But sometimes I need to zone it out, just like completely. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just inside myself at the moment, and then I can sort of open up again and then respond to it or in a way. But I'm a bit stubborn. I don't like to be too influenced by things going on the outside of me. I try to sort of really focus on the inside.
so that, that is this kind of centering as well, and being in this stillness again,
Mm.
that we were talking about. Um, so there's a question in the chat from Jenny Klein, and she says, for wavelength live art, were the other members performing nearby at a distance, or was it just you? I'm also struck with how perfect the stone drawn circles are. And it seems very, athletic as well. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we didn't have a big area to work in, so they were quite close by. Um, but we had to spread out, of course, because it was during COVID. We couldn't be too close to each other.
Okay.
But we never interacted, basically. So we didn't sort of come together and make work as a team. It was quite separated but influenced by each other.
All right. And is this something that happens over like a monthly meeting, or like were you doing this regularly together, or was this like a one-off?
We did it about 5 times, I think, within a year.
Okay.
Yeah, throughout 2020.
Right.
The same space.
So you chose the same site.
Hmm.
Hmm. Did you repeat the same action, or did you?
No, I brought on other types of materials for each session. But I think this is the favorite one. I really enjoy working with the stones.
Yeah, yeah. And I love, I love the fact that you talk about failure as well. And how are you thinking about failure in, this context, or, as part of your experimental practice?
Hmm. I think well, in my normal everyday life, I don't manage it too well, but in the performances I do a lot better, because I find failure can be interesting. It can make you to force you to rethink your action, or you can allow. But I think you need to allow it to be there, because there will be something happening. But I have films which I've been filming for like 15-20 minutes, and I can't use them because it really doesn't work. And I just have to go back outside again and continue on filming. Or if I lose the stone from my head, I just have to put it back on again. I can't make it influence the action in a negative way. We all fail in something at some point in our life, quite often actually. So I think it's if I just have, for instance, when I do the group performances in a public space and I bring my material and I start within the first 10 minutes and I realize this is not working. This is not, I don't like the material anymore, or anything, like it doesn't work, or we don't talk. I know by now that allowing it to fail, I have the experience to rethink and do something else without stopping, basically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a big believer in, I think, uh, I can't stand the term failure. Actually, I never use it because I don't think that it's such a hierarchical term. And, whenever, you know, we're always making mistakes,
Yeah.
and it's about, like the yin and yang, it's about embracing the whole,
Hmm.
and through the creative process, one has to kind of take risks, and through the process of taking risks, we often make mistakes, but it's through doing that that you make discoveries as
Yeah.
well. It's in that willingness to take a risk.
Something new will emerge.
Yes, yes. And I'm wondering, yeah, and it's in the being. It's in the
Hmm.
being of doing. And, here, there's four, it appears there's, actually, is there five, six, seven?
4 stones.
4 stones, and you're balanced on them, are you? Your
Yeah,
hand balanced on a stone as well.
yeah.
Yeah. And I love, and where's the 4th stone?
There's 2 on my feet, 1 on my hand, underneath my hand, and then the 4th on my head.
Right, right. And are they specific? They look like they're different types of stones because the stone on your head looks like it's a kind of quartz.
I collect stones for where I where I travel.
Oh, really?
Also, even when I hike in the neighborhood, but I have a big collection of stones at home from a variety of places. Um, I think I picked one for each day I was in Spitsbergen as well. I couldn't bring them all home because there was quite restrictive how much luggage you could bring on the plane. But I managed to get a few there.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, there's what I'm intrigued what the symbolism of these stones are for you because obviously, stones are the time of the universe,
Mm.
our planet Earth. Well, how is that kind of extended sense of time, and that the symbolism of that within the work? Are you thinking about those things, or?
Well, I think I'm fascinated by stones because they are a piece of something larger than us, nature. So I feel like I bring some kind of energy with me back home, something that's they that's living in a way. There's I've been reading a lot of books about stones, and there's a place in Norway where you can stand with on one foot on really really old stones or ground, and something a lot younger with the other foot. And I find that really interesting that it's so much bigger than us in a way. As you say, it's about time, and it does its own thing, and it grows and sinks, and I don't know. It's bigger than us, and we are really small compared to it. And there's a sense of spiritual energy in all the stones I bring home, like different personalities, different types of energies, and yeah.
Uh, yeah, and sadly, we've got to the end of this hour, but I think that is a very beautiful place to end, because I think your work really does kind of situate us in the immensity of nature and, really kind of poetically explore these relationships
Mm.
in the land, placing the little as on in these borders. So thank you all for joining us today. The next artist focus will be with Sandra Corrigan Brethnach on December 16th at the same time, 5:15. And hope you can join us then. And big thanks to you, Annette, for
Thank you.
sharing your work today. It's been a real treat to delve into, your practice, and also the reflections, the way in which you document. Is
Mm.
really, really very special. So thank you.
Well,
And
thank
thank
you for
you.
inviting me.
Thank you. It speeds by quickly. So, and thank you to everybody in the room for joining us today and your lovely questions. So, have a good week. All the best. Bye bye.
Bye.